I've been looking over some of your problem statements, purpose statements, and research questions for this assignment that was due last week. And I wanted to provide some overall feedback to everyone, some things to think about. And before I do that, I would encourage everyone to go through and look at all of the feedback that I'm providing everyone else, because you'll be seeing some patterns, some common ideas that I'm suggesting. And the two basic ideas that I'm suggesting to virtually everyone is, one, to narrow your scope, and two, to try to be more specific. When I say narrow your scope, what I mean is try to focus on less things. So, for example, if you are proposing that you want to focus on 5 different teaching methods, try to limit your scope or narrow your scope to focus on one method. If you want to focus on 10 different types of technologies, or if you just use the word, I'm going to focus on technologies, try to narrow your scope and choose one technology. Maybe it's a wiki, maybe it's a blog, maybe it's some learning platform. So try to, in a lot of your cases, try to narrow your scope. That is, try to focus on less things so that your research questions follow this SMART acronym, making sure that your research questions are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're realistic, and timely. The second thing a lot of you also need to consider is to be more specific. So if you are talking about one method, try to be more specific and say what aspect, or think about what aspect of that one method that you want to focus on, because even a method can be kind of general. And whenever you're doing research, especially for this course, remember that you're only going to have about 3, at the most 4 weeks to collect your data. So the research really needs to be simplified in a lot of ways so that it's attainable, so that you can actually complete the research. So in a lot of cases, try to be more specific and focus on one aspect. Another thing all of you need to think about is you need to ask yourself, am I going to focus on writing or speaking? Because even if you want to focus on listening comprehension, or if you want to focus on reading, which are receptive skills, in your research, because you need to measure whatever it is you want to that you want to evaluate, you have to measure production. You have to measure either verbal speech or something that they write out. So the first thing is to focus on either written text or written information or spoken dialogue, and not to focus on both. You need to focus on one or the other. So depending on your problem and the purpose, choose one of those aspects to focus on, and that will also be reflected in your research questions. So do take a look at the general feedback here that I'm providing. Basically, in most cases, try to narrow your scope, try to be more specific, and think in terms of either written discourse or written information or spoken dialogue or oral communication. The last thing I want to mention is a lot of the courses in the linguistic strand obviously will help you. So any of the topics that you have from your notes from prior classes, from linguistics, social linguistics, psycholinguistics, discourse analysis, take a look at that, especially discourse analysis. I think discourse analysis, of all of the linguistic courses that you've taken so far, I think provide a lot of good ideas for you to research. And so I think we'll try to talk a little bit about that in class. In fact, we'll have a week or so, a little bit later in the course, where we talk about discourse analysis. But I think at this point, especially as you try to narrow down your problem statement, purpose statement, and research questions, in discourse analysis, you can focus on discourse analysis in writing, discourse analysis speaking, discourse analysis in grammar, or discourse analysis in pronunciation. So there are a lot of aspects, linguistic aspects, that you need to focus on that relate to discourse analysis. And whenever you mention, for example, language acquisition or language learning or English as a second language, again, try to be more specific in terms of identifying certain linguistic aspects of language that you can focus on. syntax, grammar, maybe semantics, pragmatics, and so on, pronunciation, phonetics. So again, try to be more specific and try to modify your problem statement in Google Drive. And we'll continue working on this in class. In fact, next week we're in week 3 this week. Next week in week 4 we'll be dedicating a little bit more time to your research, coming up with a schedule, revisiting the problem, purpose, and research questions, narrowing down your topic. And so try to spend between this week and next week trying to reflect on the feedback that I'm providing. Obviously, ask me questions if you want to reply directly in Schoology. I think that would be the best way to do it so that we can have a dialogue here within this assignment or within this forum. And do take a look at all the feedback that I'm providing everyone so that you get a better idea of what I'm looking for and how I think this will make your research more productive, in fact easier in most cases to do, and I think just a better learning experience for you, because again the idea here is that you focus on a problem that you are witnessing in class. And so because this is action research, the final thing I'd like to say is that the research questions can be in the first person. So because you are focusing on yourself, you are the researcher and the teacher, it's perfectly fine to frame the research questions in the first person. And you can also state the problem in the first person as well. So I consider that, and I'll be looking for your information here, your posts, and we'll continue working on this as we get closer to officially beginning our study.